This is your Olympic hero and former WWE champion, Kurt Angle. And I just wanted to give a shout out to my guys, Clint and Noah. When it comes to covering sports, there is no one better. And believe me, that's true. It's damn true.
Get stealing, woo, wheeling, dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun.
Gentlemen, you are the top 1%, the elite, best of the best.
The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
You are now listening to the Elite Sports Podcast, the pinnacle of hard-hitting sports talk, featuring weekly expert analysis and top-notch interviews. And now, please welcome your hosts, Clint Schweitzer and Noah Groninger.
And fresh off of a whirlwind trip down to Shreveport, Louisiana, Clint Schweitzer and Noah Groninger once again coming at you here. It's the Elite Sports Podcast. My friend Noah, it's been, 10, 12 hours since I've last seen you. I think your condition has only worsened. You are a lobster, spent too much time in the sun, the Louisiana sun, baking down. It only took an hour, but it has altered your life exponentially.
It has. It's a little hot over here, starting to peel, bubble. My skin is boiling. So we're going to try and get through this. If my skin falls off, I may have to jump off the air here. But we're going to do our best to make it through this, and maybe I'll save a trip to the emergency room.
So our trip really, it was really important that we did this because our good friend, Fox Sports' Tim Brando, lives down there in Shreveport, and we've been trying to get down to see him to interview him for our upcoming SEC football documentary, Saturday Supremacy. We've been trying to get this done for the past couple years. It's finally happened. We were able to get down there and meet him. He invited us over to his home, just a beautiful home, had this great backdrop in his backyard near his pool to do this interview. And we were able to ask him about some pertinent topics that are going on now, too. So we're going to include a couple sound bites in that. But we also have two unbelievable guests coming up in our good friend Joe Theismann, who has a new book coming out, How to Be a Champion Every Day. This is tremendous. I always enjoy the commentary of Joe Theismann, and he talks a lot in this book about people that influenced him, people like Ronnie Lott, Ron Rivera, and his mother. We're going to get into that with Joe coming up about how those people helped influence his life and career and kind of what he's been up to during the pandemic. Joe Theismann, always a great guest. But going back to Tim a little bit, how unbelievable was that to be able to go down there and interview Tim at his home? Our film, Saturday Supremacy, I feel like it's really coming together with all the interviews we've done. This one might have put it over the top, however.
Yeah, this one I think has to. Just the foremost authority on college football. Tim Brando's been in this business forever, a broadcaster, currently with Fox Sports, and grew up in Louisiana and went to school down there. And he is just ingrained in that Southern culture, in that in the South and the football down there. So getting his thoughts, his takes on everything SEC is really going to just add to this film exponentially. He's going to be seen throughout the entirety of it because he touched on pretty much every school, every topic, the surroundings, the sights, the sounds, the scenery, just everything that you could possibly want in this film. Tim Brando touched on, so you're going to see him throughout the film. I think it just made the film completely.
We also have an interview coming up with Marcus Dupree on this podcast. Yes, the best that never was. He is the subject of the ESPN 30 for 30 documentary that came out back in 2010 about the former Oklahoma star that never quite made it due to injury and some personal decisions. We're going to get into it with him. About kind of what his life's been like the last 10 years. He's gotten into things like medicinal marijuana and professional wrestling. And hey, you can't beat that. Go to boomerkush.com to check out what Marcus Dupree's been up to and some of the products that he has, anything from things like edibles and creams. Because as we've learned, as we talked to Jim McMahon, about a month ago here on this podcast, about how we're learning more and more about the use and safe use of marijuana and cannabis versus things like Percocet and Vicodin and painkillers. Jim McMahon and people like Brett Favre and guys that we've had on this show before, like former Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle, have struggled with opioid addiction, and now we're seeing that there's some safe alternatives to that. And so I support Marcus and this endeavor. So definitely check out boomerkush.com. We're going to get to that interview second, but we have so much coming up here. I want to take you first to this sound clip from Tim Brando, a Fox Sports commentator. He is so in tune with really things that are going on in the world, and a lot of that is so hard for us to comment on sometimes. When topics become so talked about and so rampant, Noah, I think it's safe to say both you and I tend to take kind of a neutral stance and just step back and kind of let it unfold. And in this case, though, we had to get into it with Tim Brando. This is it's such a crazy time and an important time. Social change is happening, and we have to be aware of that. And no matter what, we know that we have to be better, and we're trying to get to that point. It's safe to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this clip, you'll hear us. We're going to ask Tim about the comments that Drew Brees made and Dabo Swinney, and of course the comments that Jake Fromm made. But we're going to stick with Dabo and Drew because they're the kind of big names out there on this topic and what they said, and having to come out and apologize and explain themselves further, and whether people are accepting or not accepting of those apologies and those explanations. So we definitely got to hear what Tim thinks about this, because he's down there in the South where Dabo is, of course, where Drew Brees is in Louisiana. So he's definitely got some strong takes on it, and we got to hear from him.
In the case of Dabo Swinney, in my opinion, has been on the receiving end of a lot of what's wrong with modern day media. When you take a portion of a soundbite, just a chunk out of a 14-minute soliloquy, and try to pattern and put that chunk of sound into a narrative that fits your opinion, that's not news to me. You are bloviating propaganda to me. It took him 14 minutes because Dabo didn't know any other way to do it. Okay? He is not a newsman, but he does need to be socially aware. Coaches now have to be more socially aware of where they are, the moment they're in, and those circumstances they're in. It sounded like that he wasn't taking accountability for Pierman, his position coach that he had known and been with for over 30 years. That's what it sounded like. That's not what he meant, but that's what it sounded like. But pulling it out that way, painting him in that picture, I don't think was fair. But what Dabo's got to learn is what Nick Saban's already learned, and that is you're in a different fishbowl now. You've won a couple of national titles, and you've beaten Saban to get them. So you better grow mentally and understand that you're going to take on arrows that heretofore you've not had to visit. Case of Drew Brees, absolute case of getting caught in the moment. Drew's a wonderful guy, done more for the city of New Orleans and all that encompasses it, and that includes a predominantly black population. But in that moment, he was thinking about something that was exceedingly personal to him when the guy on Yahoo, I was watching it. I was watching Yahoo Business. So I knew what the context was. So many people that reacted to Drew have no idea the context of the question or where he was and how it was made. But we're living in a soundbite world, the hot take world. And Drew should have been, as many times as he's been interviewed, my goodness, he's already taken a job with NBC. He's set for life in the media after he's done. You got to be more aware of what's going on in the world around you. The moment you mention the flag, which that's not what the question was. The question was kneeling. The moment he went flag, now he brought stuff back from 3-4 years ago that didn't need to be brought back up.
Well, there you go. Powerful stuff from our good friend Tim Brando. That was just from an interview we did yesterday. Crazy enough, we were yesterday at about this time, we were in Louisiana interviewing Tim, and here we are 24 hours later. We are back in our cushy GASN Sports Elite Sports Podcast studio, and just sort of mulling over what a tremendous time that was. And those were some really poignant comments talking about kind of the media and their portrayal of certain individuals based on the narrative that they want to present, but also that people like Drew Brees, Dabo Swinney, they just need to be more aware of what's going on and being really able to just listen and take in what's going on and be more aware. I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah, and people aren't taking everything into context. They hear a sound clip of Drew Brees' comments and they go off, and they don't hear the questions leading up to that question. They don't hear the question that was asked to Drew Brees himself, and they're taking a little snippet out of Dabo Sweeney's interview, out of his 14-minute interview. They take one little snippet and put that out there for everyone, and no one goes back and listens to all of it to get the full context, the full picture of it. And they're painting these guys like Dabo Sweeney and Drew Brees as racist and horrible people, and Tim Brando, as well as I think me and you, push back on that and say, you don't know his character, you don't know his heart, he's a good person. But yes, they do need to be more aware and have more empathy and more understanding of the social injustices and issues that are going on in the black community. So you can't fault them for that, but just blanket statements crushing them and going too far with it and calling them racist, that's another issue, another problem. So people just took it too far.
Demanding that they be fired, demanding that Drew Brees announce his retirement. I mean, it goes too far. I think all this would be so much better if we all just took a moment to listen, to conversate. It's possible. I know you wouldn't think so, gauging from Twitter and mob mentality, cancel culture that exists there, but there are real humans out there that have real things to say and are willing to listen and have conversations. Is it that hard?
I apparently so, because people aren't willing to do that, and maybe we're not out there in the world enough. We're here at GSN Sports, we're out there on social media, and if we're just going by social media, then yeah, there is no room for conversing, having an enlightened conversation, hearing both sides. Someone just sitting back and listening, they're going to have to jump in there and get their viewpoint in and start name calling and cursing and just horrible things, because that's a lot of what social media is. But hopefully out there in the real world, outside of social media, these real conversations are and can take place.
Well, coming up here on the other side of our brief commercial break here, we are going to be welcoming former Super Bowl MVP from the Washington Redskins, Joe Theismann, talking about his new book, How to Be a Champion Every Day, 6 Timeless Keys to Success. Bring a spectacular piece of Napa Valley right to your doorstep today with Vermeil Wines.
Former legendary Chiefs and NFL coach Dick Vermeil started Vermeil Wines back in 1999, but his undying devotion to bringing a taste of Napa Valley to the masses actually goes back generations.
Well, you know, it started as a hobby of making 150 to 200 cases of Cabernet, Jean-Louis Vermeil Cabernet, my dad's name and my great-grandfather's name.
Vermeil wines are grown in Coach Vermeil's hometown of Calistoga, California, at the top of Napa Valley, where the vineyards are over 100 years old.
Browse all the signature wine options or become an official member today at VermeilWines.com.
Choose from 3, 6, or 12 bottles and enjoy a 15% savings with shipments each February, May, and September. You'll also get access to exclusive offerings and events such as virtual wine tastings with Coach Vermeil himself, as well as member-only wines.
Try the Signature Club, where you get 1 case per year, a 20% savings, 4 bottles of each Cabernet. These are the highest rated wines at $1 shipping all year.
To join, visit VermeilWines.com now or call 707-254-9881.
Use promo code ELITE for $1 shipping on 3+ bottles of wine. This will also apply to your first wine club order if you mention ELITE at sign up.
How you doing, my friend?
Good, guys. How are you?
Well, doing pretty good. I'll tell you what, Joe, 2020 started off pretty well for us here in Kansas City with a Super Bowl victory. Unfortunately, it's been a bit downhill from there. How's everything been going for you? How have you been holding up, friend?
Good, thank you. We're just, it's a lot of family time, trying to change the routines a little bit. I think it's important to get into a routine, and then you want to change it a little bit, create a little variety. Matter of fact, we're down here in Florida, and I have a little cabana next to the pool, which is where I work out, and I'm sort of going through my workout routine here a little bit, just trying to keep my mind and my body occupied. I think there's so many people out there that have spent so much time around one another. They're just looking for an opportunity to get out and do something. And of course, so many people, when it comes to their jobs, that have either been furloughed or it's changed tremendously. And, the world will not be, Clint, what we knew it as before. And we have to sort of create some type of a new situation for ourselves. It's funny. I've been doing some virtual meetings, and one of the things that people talk about is change. Everything is changing for us, and people aren't necessarily opposed to change. They just don't want to be changed. And I say, well, don't look at it that way. Look at this as an opportunity to examine yourself, your work, your relationships, everything that you can do. It's sort of a pause from that rut or the thing that we called life before. It's an opportunity to be able to sort of reevaluate.
Yeah, that's very well said there, Joe. And I tell you what, we're hoping here June 16th can save the day for us here, can maybe get our 2020 back on track with your new book, which is called How to Be a Champion, 6 Timeless Keys to Success. I'm so excited about this. Talk about just kind of why, how this kind of came about. This isn't your first foray into authoring a book. So talk about kind of why now and what sort of the theme here of this book is going to be and what people can expect from this.
Well, it's called How to Be a Champion Every Day, and it's been a few years in the making, more than a few years. Basically, as I started speaking, after we won the World Championship in 1982, I started being invited to corporate functions. And at those corporate functions, the various people that I spoke to, whether it was executives, whether it was people in HR, whether it was marketing, advertising, no matter what it was, they seemed to talk about the same things that we talk about in the world of sports. They talked about goals. They talked about attitudes. They talked about opportunity. They talked about teamwork. They talked about motivation. And I thought, well, geez, that's the same thing that we talk about in sports. And when you really break it down, those are the same things that happen in our lives. I mean, setting goals for ourselves, taking the right kind of attitude. And attitude is so important in this time that we're in now. Working together as a family unit is a team. Motivate. How do you motivate yourself? How do you get going in the morning? How do you keep yourself going? And so basically the book is about the parallels between the world of sports, the world of business, and our own lives, and how we have the ability to be able to try and sort of create, I call it a game plan, basically, for ourselves. Now, you could go to howtobeachampionbook.com and get a signed copy if people log on. And I'm going to be doing a live signing coming up here on the 11th of June. So it's exciting. Like I said, it's a lot was invested in it. A lot of people have been wonderful. Colin Powell contributed to it. There's a great story about a young man by the name of Joey Bozic, who was a triple amputee, who was in the first over in Afghanistan early on, and just an incredible young man who now is in Dallas, Texas, and he competes in martial arts. And I'll never forget, I was playing, of all things, I was at Camp Lejeune, and I was playing golf with the young man. And finally, about the 5th hole, I asked Joey, I said, he had a cart that you could go everywhere with. I said, what happened? He said, we were on patrol. And he said, I was in the passenger seat. I had a guy behind me and the driver, and an IED went off underneath him. And it was tragic, as we've seen so many different things happen to our military people around the world. And he said, and then he said something to me that just absolutely stunned me. And this really lends to the young people of this country and the leadership. And he said, Joey said, I can live with my situation because the men that I was responsible for were okay. And wow. I thought, what an incredible young man. And so, Joey's stories like that are in the book. And then there's the football stories about my fabulous one-yard punt against the Chicago Bears, yeah. of which I still feel like I claim the NFL record for the shortest punt in the history of the National Football League. Now, they have Sean Landeta with a -6 in the same place at Soldiers Field, and wow. I think he missed the ball. I told Sean, I said, I'm going to take the worst punt title because I believe you missed the ball. So I'm going to do that. So I had a 1-yard punt against the Bears.
I think that's a distinction that he would gladly give you there. So we can all agree on that. We'll give you that one. I want to talk about kind of the people that have inspired and motivated you over the years. Some people that are mentioned in the book are Ron Rivera, current coach of the Washington Redskins, right. 49er safety Ronnie Lott, and your own mother. Kind of talk about how those specific figures figure in here.
Well, we talk about basically following just a daily routine, just sort of almost getting in a rut a little bit. And Ron Rivera, really became his Riverboat Ron. What he did was he had an epiphany. He was daydreaming a little bit, and I think was at a stop sign and happened to roll through and slammed on the brakes. And he did everything the way you're supposed to do it. And all of a sudden, he used to always go for it. Like, he wouldn't go for it on 4th and long or 4th and 5 or 4th and 4. It was always a punt. And he changed his philosophy. And all of a sudden, he became one of the first coaches to go on it on 4th down a lot more. That was so he got the title of Riverboat Ron. And when I basically try and take the stories that I tell and say, don't just settle for the norm all the time. Don't be afraid to step outside the box and think and think progressively. And then the other one is with Ronnie Lott. Ronnie was, I think, the greatest strong safety in the history of football. And at the end of the 85 season, he broke the little finger on his hand, and the doctor said, Ronnie, we can operate on this and you'll miss the rest of the season, or we can amputate the upper part of your finger and you can continue to play. What do you want to do? And I said, without hesitation, he says, cut it off. And I happened to see him, of all places, at a golf tournament one day. I said, Ronnie, how do you do that? What happened? He said, the doctors gave me a chance to be able to play. And he said, and basically what it boils down to is he just was going to be committed to playing football. And the question I ask people is how committed are you to what you want to do? What price are you willing to pay to be special? And Ronnie was willing to give up a piece of himself, not figuratively, but literally, to do the thing he loved. Now, I'm not saying people should, everybody has to make their own decision as to what is important to them. And so, that's the story. And of course, my mom, when it comes to customer service, my mother taught me something about it, and I didn't even realize it when I was younger until later years. And my mom insisted on me being a gentleman. She said, Joey, a gentleman opens a car door for a lady. A gentleman helps a lady on with her coat. A gentleman helps a lady into her chair. These are things that a gentleman does. And I know we're at a different time in society and certainly respect everybody. And it's important to do that. But I still think the overture to offer that to someone, to your partner, to someone you're with, I think is special. And so it's just the little things we can do to let people know how much we care. And that fits into that category of customer service. Now, how do we let people know how much we care? And there's all kinds of different ways. And so those are 3 of the stories that are in the book.
Well, Joe, those 3 stories, just a little bit you've told us right now, have us excited for this book. So we're going to be on the lookout for June 16th for that. And but now we're going to move to the 2020 Redskins. They draft Chase Young, the defensive end out of Ohio State, and they're under new leadership with Ron Rivera there, who we just talked about, we just mentioned, who's in your book as an inspiring figure. So talk to us a little bit about the 2020 Redskins, what you see moving forward for them.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're an interesting football team. It's a very young football team. Over the last 3 years, in the last 3 drafts, I think all but 1 or 2 of the players from those drafts are on the football team. You've got 5 number ones basically up front with Chase Young, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, and Ryan Kerrigan. They're all ones. It's a very young, except for Ryan, who's a little longer in the tooth. It's a young bunch. Landon Collins, I thought, did a terrific job coming in as a safety. And now Scott Turner is going to get a chance, obviously Norv's son, who was the coordinator for 4 games last year for the Carolina Panthers. He'll bring an offense in, which interestingly enough is the same offense basically that I ran 35 years ago, that his father has run in Dallas with Troy and had success different places. It's a numbering system versus memorization. I think it's much easier to get somebody in and get them ready to play in this system than some of the others from a memorization standpoint. But and then it really is going to boil down to the quarterback position, like it always does. Kyle Allen comes over from Carolina, basically familiar with the system, but really only started the last 7 games or so. Dwayne Haskins that was drafted as the quarterback. And Dwayne is, Dwayne has everything that you need to play this position. He's big, he's strong, he's smart, has a good arm. He loves the game of football. He's willing to learn. He processes well. The thing is people ask me about him. I say, there's just not a big enough body of work. And it's funny, we're talking about the Redskins because that wild card out there is Alex Smith. Obviously everybody in Kansas City is familiar with Alex, and, Patrick gives Alex an awful lot of credit for that 1 year that he tutored him and learned a lot from him, his work ethic, his study habits, the way he prepares, the way he takes care of himself. Patrick learned all those things from Alex. And Alex, basically did the same thing with Dwayne last year. He worked with him. But I know he's trying real hard to try and come back and play. And that's one of the things that I'm curious about for the 2020 Redskins is what's going to happen with Alex Smith. I mean, he's a big cap number. If he stays, does he play? Is he well enough to be able to play? That's a big question. Is Darius Geis going to be healthy enough after 2 years of not being able to play? How much does Adrian Peterson have in the tank? See, the Chase Young draft was perfect. He was the perfect fit for the Redskins. And, I've said this to people before. If the Redskins did not take him, it would have been a much bigger story than anything that, by taking him, because, he's a 4-3 defensive end. They're going to a 4-3 under Jack Del Rio. Like I said, they got a bunch of talent up front. So, and the wide receiver position, a lot of young guys are there. You have Terry McLaurin, but after that, Cam Sims is pretty good. Steven Sims Jr. came on last year. The last 3 years have produced a lot of really, really young football players. And now what they have to have is some consistency. You just have to have consistency now at the quarterback position, at the coaching position, and give everybody a chance to sort of become familiar. And instead of having to think about what you're doing all the time, just to be able to react.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about Alex Smith. Of course, we know him very well here in Kansas City. I'm sure you've seen the E60 that aired about a month ago, and the parallels between November 18th, 1985 and November 18th, 2018 were stark, and they were apparent. Just talk about what Alex Smith, maybe went through and kind of some comparisons to what you went through as far as the rehab goes. I mean, nobody could have guessed or predicted the infections and the hospital visits and the near amputation that Alex went through, but just kind of draw some comparisons there. I mean, obviously they're there, and it's very stark and kind of unbelievable that the date lined up the way it did.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, so many different things paralleled it. I was there that night. It was the same place on the field, I believe the 39-yard line. The same day, obviously, the score of the game turned out to be the same, except Houston won it in 2018. We won it in 1985. Both of us were at the latter stage, in our career. He's 34, I was 35. And it just goes on and on. I have a nephew named Alex Smith, which is even more bizarre and crazy.
Wow.
But up to the injury, when he broke his leg and then, I broke mine, those were things that that's where the similarities were. But where it really changed is what he went through. I did not wind up with an infection, thankfully. So I didn't have to go through so many of the things that he's gone through to try and really save his leg and save his life. He came within 24 hours of losing his leg. I mean, it was that close that it was going to happen. So I admire him so much. I mean, what you saw in that Project 11 was just how much of the leg was removed and replaced. And he just continues to be an unbelievable stalwart. The interesting thing is people ask me about Alex Smith, and I say, look, the guy used to carry rocks underground or underwater to train. This is a challenge for him. And this is what it's been. And his wife, Elizabeth, in the ESPN E60, she was just a rock. I mean, it's just incredible the strength that she showed and the support she gave him and everything that he did. I mean, it was an unbelievably revealing, I thought, show about love, about passion between people for the game, the desire to want to do something. And I would hope it would be an inspiration to everybody and say it can be done. You can overcome obstacles, no matter how big you think they are.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that and his one of his goals is to try and come back and be a starter in the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there and if he does come back and ever play for the Redskins and what they do with that contract. But we also talked about someone he mentored. That's Patrick Mahomes. We've had you on before and talked about him, but these playoffs this last year, the Chiefs were down at least 10 in every single playoff game, including the Super Bowl. But they get it. Mahomes is magical. That run against the Tennessee Titans where he's just will not go down. He will not be denied. They go on to win that game. They're in the Super Bowl. They're down 10 with about 7 minutes left in the Super Bowl. We all know the jet chip wasp that he calls that play and hits Tyreek Hill down the field, and the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. Just talk to us about Patrick Mahomes and what you saw in that playoff run and how special this quarterback is.
You know, he's so special. And if I was going to take him and describe him in one word, it would be fun. The way he plays looks like fun. The way he enjoys the game looks like fun. The way he gets everybody excited is fun. I mean, it's just he's incredible. I mean, he is an incredible young man, terrific arm, versatility. I sent Andy a text. Andy Reid's one of my favorite people in the world. So one day he threw one of those no-look passes, and I think it got intercepted. And I sent Andy a little text. I said, you know, I know this is old-fashioned, but Patrick might want to every now and then consider looking at the receivers he's throwing the ball to. Just as a – Andy sent me back a LOL. But he's just – he just has such – and the thing he has is he has a presence about him. He has a professionalism about him. He's wonderful with the media. I think he's a terrific young man. He's a great role model for so many people out there that want to aspire to play professional football. He's a special talent. He's one of those kids that comes along that you're not going to see disappear, I think, in 2 or 3 years. He's a generational quarterback. You're looking for the next Aaron Rodgers, the next Tom Brady, the next Drew Brees, the next Phillip Rivers, those that have had meant so much to the game. And Patrick and Russell Wilson are the guys I think that lead this group going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, Joe, can't thank you enough for spending some time with us. Know you're on vacation down in Florida. I'll be joining you here pretty soon, heading down to Destin in not too long. So hopefully things are getting back to normal. We're going to get things going and get football back on track for this year. Again, the book is How to Be a Champion Every Day, 6 Timeless Keys to Success. You can pre-order it now. It comes out officially June 16th, June 11th. Definitely hop on board for that live, that online signing, which will be tremendous. Joe, it's always a pleasure. You always are so generous with your time with us. We can't thank you enough, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it so much. And if you're down here, hopefully we can get out to dinner or something. But we'll stay socially distant. That's all I can tell you.
Of course. I'll bring my mask, Joe. You bet. No problem. Thanks so much,
guys.
Man.
Take care.
It's always an honor.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Noah, it is always a good day in our lives when we're chatting with Joe Theismann. He has been a true friend of this show's for many years now, dating back to about 2016. So for 4 years, he's been coming on. I've never in my life encountered a person that I text and they text back quicker than Joe Theismann. It's one of those deals. Joe, want to hop on and talk about your book? Sure, I'm on vacation in Florida, but I got 20 minutes. It's unbelievable. What a guy. I tell you, Joe's one of my favorite people. It's because of people like Joe, like Tim Brando, that we were able to tell him this in person, that have made this podcast what it is today. Growing from literally doing interviews with a tiny USB clip mic in our basement, interviewing anyone that would come on here, any former chief, any former athlete that we could con to get on this show just to talk about sports with. We were so thirsty for it. And now here we are and formulating these great relationships. Man, it really makes you take a step back, doesn't it? And great stuff from Joe. The book is tremendous, How to Be a Champion Every Day. Go to Amazon.com right now and get it. It comes out June 16th officially. You can pre-order it now. But wow, doesn't it just make you take a step back sometimes?
Not only just take a step back, but just get out of your own bubble and what we do here on a daily basis and really think about what's going on. And think about my childhood watching Mike Patrick, Paul McGuire, and Joe Theismann calling Sunday Night Football. And to think that he's not only a regular guest on this show, but a friend of ours. And you heard it there. He said when we get down to Florida, we can go out, text him, hit him up, go out to dinner, and have a good conversation and just a nice meal with him. And just to think about where we came from, like you mentioned, in the basement in 2012 to where we are today, and not letting it go to our heads or taking it for granted and just like, okay, well, on to the next interview. Like, no, taking a step back, like you mentioned, and really thinking about it and appreciating and being so grateful to all the people that have come on the show and helped us out. And of course, those two names, Tim Brando and Joe Theismann, have just been instrumental to getting us to where we are today. So Joe is just absolutely the best. I've loved him since my childhood in the Sunday Night Football booth. I wish he was still in a booth, but getting to talk to him, having him come on our show regularly, and just today talking to him about the E60 Project 11, about Alex Smith, just the Mahomes run through the Super Bowl and what it means for Andy Reid, and just the Redskins, what Ron Rivera, who he talks about in his book, is going to do for the Redskins in the drafting of Chase Young and what their outlook is in 2020. And it's just so great. It's unbelievable. I have to pinch myself sometimes, although not right now with the sunburn. But when I don't have that, I pinch myself and just can't believe just the amount of great people that we've had on and the graciousness that they've shown us.
Yeah, you're going to have to avoid human contact, the sun, showers, water, basically any sort of interaction with the outside world. And this is indefinite right now. So
foreseeable future, everybody, to be determined when I can go back out in the world. It's coronavirus kept me in, and then that's kind of gone away, but now the sunburn is keeping me in. So the world just doesn't want me to be out in it, so I won't. I'll stay inside. I'm sorry. I
will say this. It's a very pronounced and very, like, I don't want to say small, but as far as like comparison to like a whole body, it's a small area kind of on your knees and lower thigh.
Forearms,
and forearms. But for those concentrated areas specifically, I don't know that I've ever seen a worse sunburn, and like that all manifested itself in 1 hour of time. And so
I was right there. I was probably blocking the sun from you because I was on your left. And the sun was on our left, just beating down unmercifully. And it got me. I was sitting there. I felt my skin bubbling up. I took one arm to cover the other arm to keep the sun off that, and then switching and putting my arms behind the chair, like hide from the sun. And none of it worked. And it's bubbling right now. So we're going to have to end this podcast pretty soon.
Well, before we do that, our next guest is Marcus Dupree, the best that never was. Looking back, it's been 10 years since that documentary aired on ESPN, the 30 for 30. Is there anything that comes to mind? I don't know how long it's been since you've seen it, but it was always one of the more impactful ones to me. Marcus is one of those cases that, he was so highly recruited over, I think he said he had letters from 300 schools, which back then there was not even close to that many. Obviously, there's only like 120 Division I schools. I mean, he's literally gets a letter every school in the country. He was one of the more highly recruited athletes in the history of high school recruiting, from Philadelphia, Mississippi, was just an absolute stud, like 6'2", 240 pounds, blazing speed. He had it all. Barry Switzer said he was the best player he ever coached, talent-wise. And he just, because of injuries, because of decisions, he leaves Oklahoma after his sophomore season. It never happened. And that happens. That's life. But what Marcus is doing now is tremendous. He's a great guy, and he was, he joined us on Zoom. So if you want to see the video of this interview, go to our website, gasnsports.com, and you can see the video as well. But Noah, I mean, just looking back on the film and kind of Marcus as a person, what did you kind of take away from it? It's great to have him on coming up. I can't wait to do it.
Yeah, just thinking about his short college career and just what would have been had he gone to the NFL. To almost harkens to Bo Jackson and him making it to the NFL and his career cut short with that devastating injury. And just these two great backs and where they could be in just legends of the NFL and great backs. We always talk about Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, O.J. Simpson, Eric Dickerson, and to think about what Marcus Dupree and Bo Jackson, they could be in that conversation. They had all the talent, all the potential in the world to be not just in that conversation, but near the top of that conversation of best running backs in NFL history, and to just see some of these guys that are just have all that right there for the taking in front of them, and to see it ripped away either by choices or injuries is just sad. And going back to the film, I remember Marcus talking about some of the recruiting, and I think he was like Texas school recruiting him and trying to offer up like parts of like oil fields and like just the amount of crazy things that all these schools were offering him just blew my mind.
It was the Wild West, and Texas looked like it was going to be the school for Marcus. And at the last second, it was kind of like one of those deals. Billy Sims showed up at Marcus's high school in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And the next thing you know, he's committing to Oklahoma. And it was a decision he never really was comfortable with. And he was not able to really acclimate there. The coaching staff, he kind of clashed with the coaching staff and Barry Switzer. And we're going to hear in this interview, they're good friends. He and Barry Switzer are great friends. Now they hang out. It's unbelievable kind of where the relationship has gone. And he's a Boomer Sooner all the way. I thought it might be a case of he went there. It was the wrong choice for him. He should have listened to better people. And, he regrets it. No, he's Boomer Sooner all the way. Hence the name of his brand, Boomer Kush. If you're an Oklahoma fan, and I guess that they cater to the Boomer Sooners. Not only that, Noah, he played with Dr. Death, Steve Williams, on that offensive line, 3-time All-American guard there at Oklahoma. There's a great story coming up about Dr. Death. He wound up being a very famous professional wrestler. He was an offensive lineman on Marcus's freshman year team there at Oklahoma. So enough about it. We got to bring on our guest, Marcus Dupree. Enjoy this. We taped this last week. Did it via Zoom. Again, you can check the video out on GASNsports.com. Very pleased to welcome our next guest, Marcus Dupree. The marijuana deal. Tell us about this, because Boomer Kush is the website, boomerkush.com. You can go and check out all the products. How did you get involved in this? And just kind of tell us some of the various products and what people can find when they go there.
Well, basically, I got into the hemp business last year, and I was kind of leery a little bit about getting into the marijuana and wondering what people would say. And then at the end of the day, I was like, I'm 56 years old. Who gives a crap? It's it's about business. It's about helping people, and that's why I got into it.
Well, what kind of various products? Because I know that as I'm kind of educating myself in the last few years about the uses of medical marijuana, we had Jim McMahon on our show recently, who's a huge advocate for medical marijuana and some of the products, and he has just had all sorts of issues with early dementia and things like that. But tell us, from an athlete's point of view, maybe some of the benefits and what people could get from some of these products.
Well, from my standpoint, I'm not a smoker, but I take the gummies, and we have our own pain cream, and so it helps. With being a football player, you're gonna ache every day. Someone you're gonna hurt, and so I just started eating the gummies, and it helped me sleep at night. I had back surgery a couple of months ago, so I didn't have to take any opiates. So it's so many benefits from the cannabis plant, not only some clothes, but for pain, for PTSD, for kids that I guess maybe have MS or something. It's a number of things that this plant can help with. I mean, trying to stay healthy and trying to feel good. And everybody sees the marijuana plant and they think, oh, well, you're trying to get high. And at the end of the day, it's not about that. I know some people are trying to get high, but some people are just trying to feel good.
What a wonderful alternative. We talked to people like Jim McMahon about this. Think about a quarterback like Brett Favre, who at one point was taking up to 40 Vicodin in a day, the dangers of opioid abuse and overdoses that happen. And this is just such a safe, natural way to feel better, like you said. And I want everybody to head over there to boomerkush.com. You can see all the products that are available. It's wonderful. That I think this is an Oklahoma City company. Is that correct?
Well, we're in Tulsa,
okay.
Oklahoma. Yes. And I teamed up with another company called Gold Rush, and so they're big OU people, and so we sit down and we all enjoyed each other and we all get along, and I thought it was a perfect fit for what I was trying to do. And everybody in Oklahoma says Boomer, and I said, well, we might as well just come up with Boomer Kush. So that's how that came about. And so we have the vape cartridges, and we have the pain cream, we have the prepackaged flour, we have the pre-roll. They're going to be like the cigarillos. So I'm trying to do something a little bit different instead of just the norm. And so we're trying to stay kind of high end part of it. We're going to have the Canagar, which looks like a cigar. We also doing some sodas. And check this out. So I was in this guy from Louisiana. You know, I'm from down that way. And so I was looking at his pralines. And I was like, oh, my God, everybody loves pralines. So we're going to put the THC in the pralines.
Oh, I'm
in.
in.
You know, everybody already loves the pralines. So now they can get a little whatever they want with the pralines. So we're working on that right now, man. In fact, the guys baking some today so we can try them to see what would be the right fit for us, the milligrams in the pralines.
That's tremendous. I just applaud everything you guys are doing. I'm a huge advocate for this, and I just want you to know that's tremendous on my end. And, you know, Oklahoma State, Texas fans, it may be called Boomer Kush, but get right in there and get some of it. You know, Oklahoma's in the college football playoff every year. Those two fan bases can strive for that as well, and they can do it with some Boomer Kush. You know what? Nothing wrong with that, right?
Nothing wrong with that. Hey, everybody got a little pain, no matter if it's a Oklahoma State fan or Texas fan or Mississippi State fan or LSU fan. Everybody has some pain. So, you know, the only problem is right now we can't ship out of state. So,
okay.
And I think in November they changed the law. So if you need a medical card, come to Oklahoma and get you some Boomer.
Hey, absolutely, Marcus. I am all about it. I got to ask you because we actually do a professional wrestling podcast called The Main Event here. And I know that in the last couple of years, you got involved in professional wrestling and you talked about kind of what a childhood dream it was for you. So I got to ask you, how did this kind of come about for you getting involved in pro wrestling? Because I know you grew up in Philadelphia, Mississippi. And what wrestling were you watching back then? Because I think Continental was down in Alabama. And I don't know if you got much NWA down there. How did this all start for you, the wrestling side?
Well, I can tell you it started back with Mid-South with Bill Watts.
Ah.
I played with Dr. Death. And so, you know, just all the people that, you know, in that area, that was a Mid-South. And the Mid-South was rocking, man. You know, you had all the stars come through there. And we got every chance, me and my friends and cousins had a chance to go see wrestling. We always was a part, wanted to see it live. And then they had the TV show that came on like on Saturdays and Saturday evenings. So it was like a full day after a football game on Friday night. All our guys would go in and watch film that morning, and then all the rest of the day was nothing but wrestling from Jerry Lawler up in Memphis to I think mid-morning it was Mid-South, and then at the end of the day you had NWA out of Atlanta, I think.
Yeah.
So it was a full day.
Well, I was going to ask you about Dr. Death because Jim Ross on his Grill and JR podcast just did a show about Dr. Death, and I had to look it up because I was like, I thought Dr. Death was Steve Williams was a senior when you were a freshman coming in there, and they talked about just what an animal he was, and just a 3-time All-American there at Oklahoma, 3-time wrestling All-American as well. Just what a career, and then goes on as a great career in wrestling. Just what was he like as a person, and running behind his blocks? It just had to be a true pleasure.
Well, I can tell you this: the first day, you know, as a freshman, you come in wide-eyed, and you don't know what to expect. So all my teammates, for as freshmen, because we're out practicing before the upperclassmen would come in, so all of a sudden we heard this big scream, like, go, ah! So everybody's looking around like, who is that? And so I think Coach Galen Hall said, oh, that's just Dr. Death. I said, well, what side of the ball is he on? They go, yeah, he's the offensive guard. I said, oh, great, let's go. So I'm ready. But, yeah, he was great to run behind, and he was always talking in the huddle like, give it to big boy, let him go, give it to big boy, I got you, big boy. So we were friends, and then after he stopped playing, we got to be friends, and that's kind of who kind of talked me into getting into wrestling a little bit.
So when you got in the ring, what was it like for you? It's a lot of people can't even fathom the bumps and the pain and some of the things that you have to do, the training wise. So what was it like for you getting in the ring?
Well, I had been out of football for a minute, but it was good to get back and feel the bumps and just being in contact with people. And strange as it sounds, it made me feel better. So I enjoy going out there and seeing all the people do what they do and get into it. And it's just fun to watch, and just going back, thinking about the memories as a kid and being able to actually do it. It was very exciting to me.
That's so cool. A good friend of ours, Levon Kirkland, who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, was a huge wrestling fan too growing up, and he was kind of jealous. We were talking to him. I was like, I think Marcus got in there, man, and he got to do it. Levon's like, man, I'm too old now. There's no way I couldn't do it. So,
but I still do it. Still do it. I just wrestled like a couple months ago. He can still do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell him that. I knew you'd been in there at least as of a year or so ago. So you're still in there. That's amazing. I'm so glad.
I still go do it. Also, I play a heel. Also, I do the role of a heel. I like the heel part because you don't have to be a nice guy.
It's funner. It's more fun that way.
So I play the heel as I have a mask on. I had to send you the mask. I look crazy. It's called the Crypt Keeper, and so I like playing the bad guy.
Well, that's awesome because you've got kind of a built-in character of the perfect baby face coming in there as the football hero, because that was sort of the deal. I mean, guys like Dr. Death came in, he played a heel and a baby face both, but guys like Ron Simmons came in, he was a perfect the All-American from Florida State, perfect baby face. So it's cool that you took it in a different direction because heels are more fun. Yeah. That's what Chris Jericho said.
It is. Heels are more fun. You get to act like you're gonna slap the old ladies or whatever. So it's funny to see it. It's funny to do it.
That's so great. I'll tell you, I just watched the ESPN 30 for 30, the best that never was, just last night. It had been a while since I'd seen it. It's been 10 years now since that came out.
I can't believe it's been that. These years have went by so fast.
It's incredible. It's always been one of my 5 favorite ones. And just take us back, because 10 years that have gone by, do you look back with any regrets? Are you happy with the way it came out? What is your thoughts on the documentary?
I love the way it came out. I kind of helped produce it a little bit. Jonathan Hawk, who produced it, we're best friends. He came and stayed at my house about a month ago, right before Corona hit. He brought his son down and we went fishing. I took him out on the 4-wheeler. We rode horses. It was great. I thought it turned out great.
It's truly tremendous, and it's a great human interest piece. It always hits me because you think about so many great players like yourself. I mean, Barry Switzer, who you had a love-hate relationship with. In the documentary, I kind of took in my notes here, he said, the quote, "Marcus is the greatest player I ever coached," end quote, which says a lot because he coached a lot of players. I mean, Billy Sims before you, who helped kind of get you to Oklahoma. And he says that about you, and you guys didn't have the greatest relationship at times either. So that's kind of a telling statement from him.
And we had the best time now. He calls me every week, just about. I called him. I just talked to him Saturday night.
Wow.
And I was like, "Coach, you got out of the house yet?" He said, "No, Marcus, I'm freaking growing a freaking beard. I look like I should be riding a Harley Davidson or whatever." I said, "Well, hell, Coach, let's do it." Yeah. So I go to his house. I mean, we stayed. People thought, after the years went by, we got to be friends. He used to call me when, he was with the Cowboys. He said, I would tell Emmett, that 22 you wearing, I know somebody's a lot better than you. So that made me feel good. So we're friends. We stay in contact all the time.
So, and it's crazy to think, because it made me realize today, because we cover college football recruiting. We're here in Missouri, so I cover a lot of Mizzou football recruiting, and just how the game has changed. You talk about, we just covered a guy yesterday that just announced very humbly on his Twitter. People make Instagram videos now. Like, what kind of advice would you give to kids now that are going through what you went through? Because I don't think that maybe in the history of recruiting anybody went through quite what you did with the pressure and the schools and all that you went through.
Well, just basically find a place that you got great communication with the coaches. You got to understand what your role is going to be if you do go to that school. You got to sit down with your parents and do a lot of praying and take the advice of your parents. And if someone's around who's been through it, call them and see what is that you need to do. But at the end of the day, it's about, are you going to be happy at that school? Are you going to be happy with the role you're going to play? Because a lot of freshmen think they can come in and start right now. And a lot of them are not going to be able to start. So they got to understand that part of it. You got to understand, what is your goals? What is your goals to go, to go to that school? My goals was to get a degree from Oklahoma, to win a national championship. I wasn't even thinking about the Heisman Trophy. I just want to play with great players, be coached by great coaches, and be a part of something, a school that has tradition. So that was my goals. And play on TV. That was the main thing, playing on TV. if you play on TV, people gonna see you. And for Oklahoma, it was good because they played on the East Coast and the West Coast and some of the South, and people always saw Oklahoma on TV. So that was some of the main things that I was looking for.
Well, I always heard my dad talking about you. You were playing right before I was born. I was born in '84. So you're at Oklahoma a couple years before that. And my dad always said, yeah, he killed Missouri there in '82, but he had more yards against Kansas, so he was okay with it. So it's all good. You see those highlights, and you always see that you see those blue jerseys from Kansas falling all over themselves. So it's all good. What is your relationship like with the University of Oklahoma now? I mean, do you follow the program very closely? I mean, Lincoln Riley has come in and just done a tremendous job. Bob Stoops, of course, retires, and Lincoln's just kept this thing going with the quarterbacks he's had from Baker Mayfield. And, gosh, he's just done such a great job with the program. Of course, it's hard to get over the hump. The SEC kind of standing in the way. Alabama, LSU has prevented them from getting all the way. But what's your thoughts on the program today?
Well, I think everything is rolling in the right direction. I think we need to recruit some junior college All-American defensive linemen that can get back there and play right now, and then build up your defense from there. I think once we can get some dominant defensive linemen, I think we'll win a national championship.
The defensive side is definitely needs to catch up for sure. So we're here in Kansas City, and the year started off, believe it or not, Marcus, the year started off tremendous for us. Chiefs win Super Bowl 54. Patrick Mahomes, of course, comes from Texas Tech. He is the first quarterback of a Texas university to ever win a Super Bowl. What have you seen from Patrick Mahomes, man? There's really the league hasn't seen anything like him in quite some time, have they?
And they have not. He's very athletic. He's smart. He kind of takes chances like Brett Favre at times, but that's what you got to do. When you're a gunslinger, you're going to take chances. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. So he's done a great job. I like to see him play. I'm so glad Andy Reid won a Super Bowl. I think he deserves that. I think that might have solidified his position for us in the Football Hall of Fame. But Patrick Mahomes, I love to watch him play. And nobody's seen anybody like him before. So he has a little bit of. I think he has a little bit of everybody because he can throw the ball deep. He can run it if he needs to. He can be creative if he needs to, like Brett Favre. So I think he's the total package.
Well, Marcus, before we let you go, I got to ask you this question because obviously here as we're recording this, we're in a time of, great unrest in the country. And I want to go back to your time in Philadelphia, Mississippi, because one thing that really stuck out to me as I'm watching this last night with everything going on, a lot of people talked about how unifying you were as a player, that you saw black people and white people sitting together in the stands, maybe for the first time in Philadelphia, and that really brought people together. Sports to me has always been a great unifier, but I want to get it from your perspective. How do you feel about that sports and the fact that this occurred for you and maybe in your community, a small community in Philadelphia, but maybe it made waves back then as well, which is awesome.
Well, like you said, sports it brings about change for everything. I mean, I'm sure you got some housewives and husbands in the house and arguing, but maybe they all together when football comes on or basketball comes on. And sports will make a difference in people's lives. We need more sports I guess personalities to step up and speak about it. It's here, and people got to realize that racism is here. I didn't grow up. My mom didn't teach me racism. My mom was a school teacher. My grandfather was a minister, and she just said treat everybody with respect as they, respect them, and they'll respect you. And that's what I do. I didn't grow up looking at color. I wasn't taught that, and I don't know. It's just time for the people to really just look down and sit down and look at it. I mean, shoving it up under the rug like it don't exist, and it exists this day and time in 2020. So it's time for a change. It's time for people to step up. Or everybody, not just black, not just white. Everybody has to step up and address this issue.
That is so true and well said, my friend. I'm so glad we're able to do this with you today. Thanks so much for taking your time. Boomerkush.com. Again, that's the website. We're all heading there, and we're gonna make this work one way or the other. No matter who you're a fan of, doesn't matter. We're gonna unite under this pretense, and we're gonna make sure we get our marijuana cards. Got to do that first. So, Marcus, thanks so much for doing this with us, my friend. It's been a true pleasure. You're a true inspiration, man. Just watching that documentary, the the things that you didn't accomplish, perceived, are far more overridden by the things that you have and the way that you are and the way you treat people and the things that you have done. So thank you so much, man.
Well, thank you for having me on. Call me anytime, and maybe if everybody get on some of this Boomer Kush, the world might be better.
Hey, I think that's a great start. We might as well start somewhere. That sounds like a great place to start. Hey, thanks so much, my friend. We'll catch up again soon for sure.
Sounds good, man. Hit me anytime. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks so much. Powerful stuff. Amazing to hear from Marcus Dupree, the best that ever was. Man, the interviews just keep coming here. We've been so fortunate to be able to keep cranking these out, and we've got some more coming up for you, and I can't wait for you guys to hear some of what we have still to come here on the Elite Sports Podcast, as we are literally putting you on our backs and launching you through the spring and summer months, and it feels good to do it. Does it not?
It really does. We've got legendary offensive line coach Jim McNally coming up, and he coached Anthony Munoz back in those Bengals Super Bowl teams. I know that sounds crazy if for some of you younger listeners, like Bengals Super Bowl. I'm sorry, that never happened. No, it did. They went to 2. They lost to the 49ers both times. But offensive line coach during those teams in those years was Jim McNally, and coaching up Hall of Famer Anthony Munoz when he got to Cincinnati. So we're gonna have him on, and Ike Taylor's going to be coming up as well. Former Pittsburgh Steeler, former NFL Network analyst, some Super Bowls there with the Steelers. So a lot of great guests coming up. We're looking forward to it. Did I miss anyone, Clint? I think those are the next 2 coming up.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. And don't forget also Marcus Lattimore, one of the great South Carolina Gamecocks of all time, is going to be joining us, and John Abraham, another South Carolina Gamecock. How about it? I mean, we're loaded for bear here. One of the great sack artists in NFL history, John Abraham, also coming up. We don't know when, because we have so many, and this is great. We're gonna load you guys up. The content is here. Your money stays and plays with us here on the Elite Sports Podcast. So please remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify. Our website, gasnsports.com. That is the umbrella to which everything we do falls upon. Noah, it's been a tremendous honor doing this podcast with you for as long as we've been doing it. We're going to continue it on. Coronavirus, social injustice, the world bursting at the seams is not going to keep the Elite Sports Podcast down, and we hope it doesn't keep you down either, guys, because we are returning to some level of normalcy, I feel like. SEC Media Days is going to be virtual, but we're ready to get fans back in stadiums. We are ready to do this thing right. Football season is just around the corner, guys, and your money, again, always stays and plays with the Elite.